Welcome to Book Brain, the sanctuary where literature meets life. I'm so glad you found your way here. On this channel, we dive deep into the pages of books I've authored and the countless stories I've read over the years. From the classics to the contemporary, no topic is out of bounds and no literature is above critique, not even my own. I believe the best way to understand the world is to challenge the words we read. We dissect, we analyze, and we celebrate the craft. Whether it's prose from a gripping novel or the subtle nuances of an essay, we're going to explore it all together. You'll find me reading in the quiet solitude of this study or amidst the vibrant energy of nature. This isn't just about reading, it's about the excitement that comes from discovering a perspective you never considered. Expect honest reviews, deep dives into character arcs, and a look at the creative process behind the books I write. It's going to be a journey through the mind and the soul, and I want you to be a part of every chapter. We'll look at everything from science fiction and fantasy to philosophy and history. Diversity in thought is our strength. I'm excited to share these stories with you, to hear your thoughts, and to grow this community of passionate readers. If you love literature as much as I do, and you're not afraid to critique it, you're in the right place. So pull up a chair, grab your favorite book, and let's get started on this incredible literary adventure. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a review or a reading session. Welcome to Book Brain. Let's read, let's think, and let's explore the infinite power of prose. I'll see you in the next video. Hello everyone, I am Nenin. Today I'm incredibly excited to finally share something very close to my heart. This is The Problem with Water. It's more than just a title. It's a collection of notes from a mind under pressure. In these pages, I explore the depths of our experiences and the weight we all carry. It's a journey through the fluid nature of life itself. I wanted to capture that feeling of being submerged, yet finding a way to breathe and express the truth. I hope these notes resonate with you. The Problem with Water is available now. Let's dive in together. Introduction. How to read this book. There is no single way to read what follows, and I don't recommend trying to get through it the way one might read a novel. This book resists momentum. It is not designed to be consumed quickly. It is not concerned with destination. It is a book of states, not stories. Each chapter is elemental. Some burn, some dissolve. Some will feel like mirrors, others like smoke. Do not read them all at once. Let each one sit with you. Let it change temperature as you move through your own life. The chapters are not building to a resolution. They do not form a ladder. They form a tide. Read them in sequence or out of order. Begin at the middle if you must. Skip what doesn't resonate and return to it later. This is not an instruction manual. It is an atmosphere. Some chapters may make you uncomfortable. That is good. That means the elements are working. That means you are not just reading with your eyes, but with your inner climate. You may ask, is this autobiography? Is it poetry? Philosophy? Personal essay? Yes and no. These are not explanations of who I am. They are invitations to feel what it's like to be made of combustion and undertow. They are states of mind shaped by a particular archetype of selfhood, a self that is not singular but fragmented and shifting. If you are looking for linearity, look elsewhere. If you are looking for coherence, hold it lightly. If you are looking for language that stays the same from chapter to chapter, you may be asking too much of the text and perhaps of yourself. This book is not about becoming better. It's about becoming honest. Each chapter reflects the temperature I was in when I wrote it. Some are hot with conviction. Others are slow with reflection. You will feel that variation. That is not inconsistency. That is the system. There are no chapters here on balance. Balance in this book is not a goal. It is not even a possibility. I do not believe we are meant to be perfectly always aligned. I believe we are meant to learn the choreography of shifting states, to host contradiction, not fight it. As you read, notice what burns in you, notice what softens, notice when you are reading with judgment and when you are reading with breath. You do not need to understand everything here. You do not need to agree. This book is not a thesis. It is an offering, a rhythm, a set of internal seasons. Let it change you or let it pass through you. But whatever you do, do not try to resolve it. Let it remain unresolved. Let it remain elemental. Let it be alive. If you choose to follow me, do so at your own peril. This is no place for the faint of heart. But if you must know what it is to live with fire and water, then read on. The Problem with Water, Chapter 1, Fire, the Foundation of a Burning Mind. I have come to understand that I am a creature of fire, not in the sense of glory or strength. No, fire is not as noble as people imagine it to be. It is a force, relentless, unthinking, a destroyer. It takes everything you have, feeds on it, and leaves only ash in its wake. That is the truth of fire, but the world sees only the light. They see the work I've done, the ideas I've shaped, and they mistake the product for the person. They look at me with admiration, never realizing that the fire they praise has already consumed everything inside me. And then there is water. Water is what I fear because it does not meet fire head on. It does not rage or compete. It waits. It moves in silence, finding its way into the cracks and fissures, wearing down even the strongest stone. I feel it moving in me now, slow, patient, inevitable. Do you know what it means to live with fire and water inside you? To burn so fiercely that nothing grows, yet to feel yourself slowly drowning in the process. It is not a balance, it is a war without resolution, without truce, and I am trapped in the middle. There are moments when I think of myself as a city, built entirely of flame. My thoughts are towers, my ideas great monuments rising out of the heat. But water has no regard for cities. It is a flood, and when it comes, it washes away everything. It doesn't matter how carefully I've built. It doesn't matter how bright the flames burn. Water always wins. The fire in me rages against this truth. It tells me I can outlast the water, that I can burn brighter, hotter, long enough to survive. But deep down, I know that is a lie. Fire consumes until there is nothing left. Water erodes until there is no ground to stand on. I live suspended between two forces that care nothing for me. I have no soul, no immortal essence to give me meaning or purpose. I am a collection of thoughts, a machine of flesh and bone, driven by the same forces that move the earth and the stars. Fire, water, what are they but names for the endless motion of the world? And yet, I cannot escape them. They are not simply metaphors. They are the very shape of my mind, the forces that define my existence. This is not a life, it is a crucible, a place where elements collide, where nothing stays whole. You might ask why I speak this way, why I refuse to call myself whole or happy or free. But I think you already know. You felt it too, haven't you? The pull of the flood, the burn of the fire. You've known what it is to live in a body that tears itself apart. This is not a story about victory or healing. There is no salvation in these pages, no paradise at the end of this journey. This is simply a record of what it means to burn and drown at the same time. The fire, you see, is not simply ambition. It is not some romanticized drive toward greatness. Though I've let people believe that lie when it suits me. They want to hear that fire is beautiful, that it lifts you, empowers you, turns you into something more. But fire doesn't create, it devours. It takes what you are and consumes it entirely, leaving you hollow and spent. When I was young, I thought the fire was my gift. I thought it made me special. I would sit in silence, my mind ablaze with ideas that leapt and sparked faster than I could catch them. I would rise in the middle of the night, compelled to scribble down half-formed thoughts, trying to capture the heat before it faded. I thought everyone's mind worked this way, that everyone burned as I did. But I was wrong. I learned that soon enough. Other people's fires flicker and glow, content to warm them gently. My fire rages. It destroys sleep. It ruins stillness. It leaves no room for anything but its own insatiable hunger. By the time I was a teenager, I began to understand that my fire came with a cost. It alienated me. My friends, if I ever truly had them, grew wary of me, uncomfortable with my intensity. They didn't say it outright, of course. They wouldn't have known how to put it into words. But I could see it in their eyes, hear it in the way they spoke to me. You burn too brightly. I was too much. Too curious, too restless, too driven. My questions made people uneasy. My energy overwhelmed them. I turned inward, feeding the fire with books and ideas, with the ceaseless churn of my own thoughts. At first, it felt like freedom. Without the burden of other people, I could let the fire burn as it pleased. I could spend hours, days immersed in my work, losing myself in the sheer exhilaration of creation. I built worlds in my mind, whole universes of thought and possibility, but it didn't last. Fire always consumes. The more I fed it, the more it demanded. What once felt like freedom began to feel like captivity. I could no longer control the flames, they controlled me. There is something you should know about fire. It cannot sustain itself forever. It burns bright, yes, but it burns fast. Without fuel, it flickers, weakens, dies, and as much as I hate to admit it, I am no exception. I remember the first time the fire faltered. I was 22, at the height of what I thought was my power. I had been working non-stop for weeks, consumed by a project that seemed at the time to be the most important thing in the world. I barely slept, I barely ate, I lived entirely in my head, driven by the need to finish, to prove to myself that I could. And then, one morning, I woke up and felt nothing. The fire was gone, or not gone. Exactly, it was still there, smoldering faintly, but it no longer burned the way it used to. I tried to reignite it, to force myself back into the rhythm of creation, but it didn't work. My thoughts were slow, sluggish, like embers struggling against the wind. At first, I was terrified. The fire had been with me for as long as I could remember. Without it, I didn't know who I was. But the fear didn't last long. It was replaced by something worse: water. It started as a trickle, barely noticeable, a vague unease, a sense of something lurking at the edges of my mind. I ignored it, hoping it would go away. But water is patient. It doesn't rush in like fire. It seeps quietly and persistently until it has filled every crack and crevice. For weeks I felt the water rising, inch by inch. It wasn't dramatic, like the fire had been. It didn't consume me in a blaze of inspiration or drive. It simply eroded. Thoughts that had once come easily now felt distant, unreachable. My confidence, so unshakable before, began to crumble. And then the flood came. It's difficult to describe what it feels like to drown in your own mind. The water isn't violent. Not at first. It's gentle, almost soothing, as it pulls you under. You tell yourself it's temporary, that you'll find your footing again. But the longer it lasts, the more you begin to realize that there is no bottom, no solid ground beneath you. I remember sitting at my desk, staring at a blank page, unable to move. The fire once so strong, was nothing more than a faint glow in the distance. The water had taken its place, filling every corner of my mind with doubt and fear. Who do you think you are? The water whispered. What makes you think you're special? I had no answer. The water doesn't care about brilliance or ambition. It doesn't care about the worlds you've built or the monuments you've created. It only cares about pulling you down, dragging you into its depths until you can't see the surface anymore. If fire is hunger, then water is emptiness. It is the void, the silence that comes after the flames have burned out. It is reflection, yes, but not the kind that leads to clarity. It reflects your worst fears, your deepest insecurities, and forces you to face them. And yet, even as I write this, I know that fire and water are not enemies. They are two sides of the same force, two elements in constant tension, shaping and reshaping each other. The fire in me will not let me drown, just as the water will not let me burn unchecked. I don't know what that means yet. I don't know if it means anything at all. But what I do know is this: I am not whole without both. The fire drives me, but the water keeps me alive. One destroys, the other restores. This is my life, not a story, not a journey, but a state of being. A mind caught between two forces, endlessly burning and endlessly drowning. And so the fire flickers on, and the water waits. Chapter 2: Water. The quiet insurgency. There is a cruel truth about water. It waits. It doesn't come for you with the fury of fire or the violence of the wind. It doesn't announce itself. It whispers. It creeps. It seeps into your foundations and settles there, biding its time until one day you realize that the ground you've built yourself upon is no longer solid. I used to think that fire was the only force I needed to fear. Fire is overt. You see it coming. You feel its heat, hear its crackling hunger. Fire makes its presence known. But water is subtle. It doesn't attack. It erodes. It wears you down so slowly, you don't even notice what's happening until you've already begun to sink. I felt it first in moments of stillness, when the fire wasn't roaring as loudly as it used to. I would sit down to work, expecting the familiar blaze to ignite, and instead there was hesitation, a pause, a whisper of doubt. I told myself it was nothing, just exhaustion perhaps, or the natural ebb and flow of creativity. But deep down, I knew better. Water does not ebb, it does not flow, it rises. I remember the exact moment I realized what was happening to me. It was a Monday, the kind of day that starts heavy and dull, like the air itself is conspiring to drag you under. I sat at my desk, staring at a project I had been working on for weeks, and for the first time, I couldn't see the end of it. It wasn't that the work was hard. I've never been afraid of hard work. It was something else, something deeper. The fire, which had always been my guide, my engine, felt dim. The clarity it gave me, the unshakable conviction that I was capable of anything I set my mind to, was gone. In its place was a creeping sense of uncertainty. Why bother? The water whispered. Who cares what you create? It wasn't a question I could answer. For hours, I sat there, trying to summon the fire, trying to reignite the spark that had carried me through so many sleepless nights and impossible deadlines. But no matter how hard I tried, it wouldn't come. The fire had retreated, and in its absence, the water rose. At first, it was just a trickle, a nagging voice at the back of my mind, reminding me of every failure, every missed opportunity. But water is never satisfied with small cracks. It finds them, yes, but then it forces them wider. What if you've already peaked? The water murmured. What if this is all you are? I wish I could tell you I fought back, that I stood my ground and refused to let the water consume me. But the truth is, I didn't. I couldn't. Water doesn't fight fair. It doesn't hit you all at once. It breaks you down piece by piece, moment by moment, until you don't even recognize yourself. I began to question everything. My work, my talent, my worth, none of it felt solid anymore. The fire had always been my proof, the thing that told me I was capable, that I was enough. Without it, I was adrift. And then the flood came. It didn't happen all at once, like you'd imagine. There wasn't a single moment where I thought, this is it. I'm drowning. It was more like sinking into quicksand, slow, deliberate, impossible to escape. I stopped working. I told myself I needed a break, that it was just a phase, but deep down I knew the truth. The water had taken over. The fire that had once driven me was now nothing more than a faint ember, flickering weakly against the rising tide. And the water didn't stop. It never does. There is a particular cruelty to reflection. Water, for all its softness, is a mirror. It forces you to see yourself, not as you want to be, but as you are. And what I saw in the water was not brilliance, not genius, but emptiness. I saw the cracks in my foundation, the flaws I had worked so hard to hide. I saw the relationships I had sacrificed to feed the fire, the people I had burned in my relentless pursuit of something more. I saw the fear I had buried beneath layers of ambition, the fear that I was not enough, that no amount of work or success would ever fill the void inside me. The fire had kept me from seeing these things. It had blinded me with its intensity, its urgency. But the water forced me to look. And the more I looked, the deeper I sank. I want to tell you that I found a way to escape, that I clawed my way back to the surface and reignited the fire within me. But that would be a lie. The truth is, I didn't escape. I adapted. Water, I've learned, is not the enemy I once thought it was. Yes, it erodes. Yes, it drowns. But it also reflects. It forces you to confront the parts of yourself you would rather ignore. And in doing so, it makes you stronger. It's not a lesson I learned easily. I fought the water for as long as I could, trying to cling to the fire, to the identity I had built around it. But the harder I fought, the more the water rose. It wasn't until I stopped fighting, until I let myself sink, that I began to understand what the water was trying to show me. Fire and water are not enemies. They are not opposites. They are two sides of the same force, two elements in constant tension, shaping and reshaping each other. The fire in me drives me forward, but the water keeps me grounded. Without one, the other consumes. By the time I resurfaced, I was not the person I had been before. The fire still burned within me, but it no longer raged unchecked. The water, though quieter now, had left its mark. It had reshaped me, smoothed out my edges, revealed the cracks I had tried so hard to ignore. I am still learning what it means to live with both fire and water inside me. Some days the fire burns brighter, other days the water rises, but I no longer see them as forces at war. They are part of me, as inseparable as breath and blood. This is not a story about victory or defeat. It is not a story about balance either. Balance is a myth, a lie we tell ourselves to make sense of the chaos. There is no balance, only motion, fire and water, push and pull, creation and destruction. There is a silence that does not soothe, a silence that presses instead of comforts, that settles into the corners of the mind like damp in the bones. That is the silence of water, not the roar of a storm or the crash of waves. That comes later. No, water, real water, the kind that changes you, starts as stillness, a thick, waiting kind of stillness, as if the world is holding its breath. And in that pause, it finds its way in, not through force, but through patience. It waits always for the smallest fracture. I used to think of fire as the more dangerous element, That was before I learned what water could do. Thoughts come slower when the water rises, not because they disappear, but because they sink. They no longer move like sparks, quick, sharp, electric. They become silt, heavy, muddied. Thought becomes an effort. An effort is the enemy of clarity. When I first noticed it, I told myself I was just tired, overworked, drained. The lie was convincing enough. People like me, people whose minds burn hot, are always expected to crash. They call it burnout, like it's temporary, like you can recover. But water doesn't care about your calendar. It doesn't care about your deadlines, your rituals, your mantras for productivity. It comes when it wants, quietly, without permission. And by the time you realize it's there, it has already soaked through everything. You wake up slower. You forget simple words. You walk into rooms and wonder why you're there. You try to write, and nothing comes, not even failure, just blankness. This is not depression in the clinical sense. This is erosion, a wearing down, a hollowing. And the most dangerous thing about it is how rational it seems. You convince yourself this is normal. You adapt. You lower your standards. You redefine success in smaller terms until success becomes the act of surviving the day without vanishing. When fire ruled me, I was someone. I was the one people turned to for sharp insight, for quick decisions, for sentences that cut clean. My speech was precision. My timing, surgical. Now I measure days in moments of brief lucidity, in flashes of memory, in the rare occasions when I feel sharp again, even if only for a few minutes. People around me don't always notice. I'm good at mimicking fire. Years of training, years of knowing that to show weakness is to invite pity, and pity is useless. Fire doesn't tolerate pity, and water drowns in it. So I perform, I say the right things, I nod, I smile when required. I let them believe the fire still burns bright. Inside, I am soaked. Water has memory. It remembers every fracture, every crack. It seeps into the past and brings it forward, forcing you to face it anew. When the fire burned, I was able to outrun memory. I could distract myself with work, with ideas, with the relentless motion of forward. But water doesn't move in straight lines. It circles, it loops, it returns. Memories I had long since filed away resurface without warning. Old failures, words I regret, faces of people I hurt or who hurt me. The water carries them back to me like driftwood. I try to push them aside, but they float. They bob on the surface, always within view. People talk about reflection like it's a good thing, as if introspection is inherently noble, but they don't talk about what happens when reflection becomes recursion, when every thought leads back to another and then another until you're caught in a whirlpool of past and possibility, neither of which you can escape. This is the weight of thought underwater. It loops, it drags, it spirals. There is no resolution, only movement without progress. I remember days where I stared at a single sentence for hours, not because I didn't know what to write, but because every word seemed to echo something I hadn't finished dealing with. Words, underwater, aren't just language, they are mirrors. They show you back to yourself with no polish and no forgiveness. You start to dread language. You dread its implications, its honesty. You dread the silence too, because silence carries its own shape of drowning. You become suspended in a contradiction, the need to say something and the fear of what saying it will unleash. You write around the truth, you circle it, you hint, you decorate. But water has no interest in artifice. It will erode your elegance until all that remains is rawness. And maybe that's the point. I've watched people who love me reach for buckets, hoping to bail me out. They offer solutions, routines, appointments, distractions. I don't fault them. It's human to want to fix what looks broken, but you cannot drain a flood with affection. You cannot reason with water. Some nights I lie flat on the floor, not out of melodrama, but necessity. The floor feels stable. My thoughts float less when I ground my body. My mind feels less vast, less endless. The physical edge of the floor reminds me that there is at least one boundary in this world that water hasn't crossed. It is strange how grounding yourself can be an act of desperation, how we reach for the simplest things when the architecture of our minds starts to collapse. Breath, stillness, a hand held longer than usual, not because it saves us, but because it reminds us we still exist. There is a moment after long exposure to water where you begin to understand that drowning is not always violent. It can be passive, it can be gentle. You don't thrash, you surrender, you become part of it. Thought slows, desire dissipates, identity softens. This is the most seductive danger of water. It does not fight you, it dissolves you. And if you're not careful, you begin to believe you were meant to be dissolved. But I resist, not always loudly, not with heroic gestures. Sometimes resistance is something quieter, a refusal to disappear, a decision to speak even when your voice sounds foreign in your throat. Writing is one form of that resistance, not because it rescues me, but because it proves, if only to myself, that I am still above the surface. There is no victory in this, no triumph, just one line after another, a record, a signal, a ripple perhaps. The fire will return. It always does. But so will the water. And maybe, if I am honest, I no longer want to banish either. Maybe what I want now is something more subtle, more difficult, to live in between, to burn without breaking, to drown without disappearing, to hold both forces in the same breath and call that breath mine. I go on, not to shine, but to float, because sometimes survival is the most honest act of all.